I wonder if they keep having the
like it's
vaccination
kinda
piece,
close.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if the kids are vaccinated.
Yep.
It is 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Shall we begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. We have no scheduled audience to the public for items that are not on the agenda. To begin, because we are conducting this meeting tonight partly remotely, I will call the roll. Under subsection 403A of 1 MRSA, I, Joe Long, Board Chair, will confirm that each member of the MSAD 35 School Board can both hear and be heard. I, Joe Long, will do this by calling the roll. Members present are asked to say yay. We ask that all members listen and report any audio difficulties when the roll is complete. Ms. Berman.
Yay.
Mr. Taylor.
Yay.
Ms. Holland.
Yay.
Ms. Therian.
Yay.
Ms. Flynn.
Yay.
All are present. Thank you. This first part of our meeting tonight is the public hearing on the MSAD 35 district budget. Part 1 of this hearing is on the articles of the school budget. Does any member of the public have any comments or questions on the school budget or any particular article? I'll take that to mean no. We move then to part 2 of this hearing. Part 2 of this hearing is on the referendum questions to be voted on June 8th, 2021. Does any member of the public have any comments or questions on any of the referendum questions?
Joe, can I just add some clarity, just to be...
Certainly.
So my understanding is that there will be 3 questions. There will be the budget question itself, and then there'll be 2 separate questions, one of them being regarding being able to put a capital reserve, develop a capital reserve account, and I think we said up to $50,000 if we had end-of-the-year funds, and then a special education reserve account for up to $75,000 funds. So those would be 3 different questions.
3 questions, got it.
And again, that's up to that amount. Doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be able to put that amount in, but up to that amount.
Okay, there appear to be no questions, in which case the hearing is closed. I encourage everyone to vote at the June 8th referendum or in advance by absentee ballot, please. Okay, that brings us to the report of the secretary. I will entertain a motion, please, to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
I move we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, May 5th, 2021.
I'll second, Jen.
Thank you, Lisa and Jen. Any comments or questions about the minutes?
I have like the tiniest little things.
Mhm.
Second page, number 4, June 2nd meeting, were planned for top 10 seniors and staff retirements. I think that's what that's supposed to say,
Yes,
instead
good
of top
catch.
10 retirements.
Yep.
So top 10 seniors and district staff retirements, something like that would work. And then number 6, second line, 12-year-olds. There's just an S on that. And then the next line, Mr. Caverly reported there will, 2 L's.
And I think it should say will be guidance.
Yeah, will
Let's
be
see.
guidance, right.
Right,
Yep.
perfect. I didn't even catch that. Will be. And then on the 3rd page, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, Dr. De'Aaron reported how great it was to be able to connect with the district. I think she meant with other schools in the district, I think is more accurate for that one particular statement. She was talking about how, and others were too, about how wonderful it was. One good thing that came out of COVID and the pandemic was that the schools were working more closely together. There was a lot more connection and collaboration and sharing and learning from each other.
Very
That's all I
good.
have.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? That is 6-0. Thank you very much. I have one item on the report of the chair for this evening. We did have our town officials meeting this morning. We had officials from South Berwick, but no one from Elliott, and a few of us representing the district. Jen, did you want to
Sure.
report out on that?
Yep.
Thank you.
So we started by just a reminder that tonight it was a budget meeting, and just acknowledge the evolving COVID guidelines changes. Perry and John reviewed updated masking and distancing guidelines and what that means for outdoor school events, and also Perry touched on what that means for town meetings. Perry reminded us that his contract is nearly up, so they'll be looking for a new town manager in South Berwick now as well. John reviewed that the district will likely become a vaccination site, and that's just sort of in the final stages for those 12 and older. Perry asked about state and federal funding for the next year. He also reviewed some details of revenue sharing and budgeting factors in South Berwick, especially related to real estate prices and taxes. He recognized and offered his appreciation of the school budget work. And then the traffic and busing flow was discussed, and that will be revisited a little more in depth at a later follow-up meeting. Perry reviewed the new signage that will be going in for Pumpkin Town, and also noted that the medical marijuana issue in South Berwick is an ongoing hot topic in town, and the new ordinances and guidelines there. Heather had asked about whether summer camp in town was a go, and yes, that is a go, and they'll be following all CDC guidelines. And then Mr. Cavalier reviewed that there'll be a summer reading, am I right to say summer reading remediation program as
Yeah.
well? Okay,
3 separate programs this summer,
Okay.
yes. Yep.
and that's all I have.
Very good. Heather, did you have any other notes?
Nothing else.
Okay. One thing I did want to say is that Perry did remind us that the South Berwick Town meeting will be next Tuesday, 5/18. So for all you South Berwick people. Good, thank you very much. All right. That concludes the report of the chair, and it is now time for the report of the superintendent.
Fantastic. I just want to make one correction. There actually is 4 questions on the ballot. The 4th question is regarding adult education. So there's 3 from the
Right.
district school budget, and there's 1 additional question for adult education, just for clarity. So I first wanted to go into a COVID report. And so a couple of things are on the horizon right now. And so we are doing some work, first of all, around summer activities, but typically around athletics. So there are some questions about how that will be managed in the past. And so it's been an interesting relationship in the past where people might just come in and use the facility, might use a building. And so those rules are going to change this summer, where we're going to actually have to have some contact tracing. And so the York County superintendents are working to kind of create some common guidelines, but it may impact people's ability to come watch indoor summer basketball games, for instance, summer volleyball, if there were volleyball. If kids were going to use the wellness center, we would limit the number of people that would be able to come into that as well. So, and we would also have to find a nurse in all likelihood to be able to do the contact tracing for us. And so that would be an important part. So that would be a slight change from how things have been done in the past, where it's been a little bit more independently done. And that really impacts kind of our programmatic pieces, whereas if a group were to come in, so for instance, the South Berwick Recreation Department, if they were going to come in and use our facility, that would be their responsibility to be able to handle that. And so we've met with both the LA Community Service Department and the South Berwick Recreation Department to kind of share those concerns. We've had those meetings proactively. And we got some good news that our tents, we had a little bit of trouble with some of the quality of the poles, and so we had some replacement poles come today. It made a huge difference, and so one of our tents was down in Elliott, so that will be back up. So that would be a great tool for us to use this summer and for the recreation departments and community service departments to use as well. So really positive around that. The more important issue to talk about today is transportation for next year. And so I provided in your packets kind of a summary of the current CDC guidelines around bus transportation. And so I was just going to go through those with all of you because I'd like to be able to make a decision kind of going forward as what our next step is. And so when you look at busing transportation recommendations, you know, a lot of these are around you know, the vehicles that are used, you know, for students riding the bus, symptom screening, these are all things we already have in place. So if you're not feeling well, don't come to school. It's kind of that same self-screener that we have. We want to keep physical distancing at bus stops. Mask and face coverings are going to be required. Believe it or not, this is a tricky one, the hand sanitizing both when they get on the bus and when they get off the bus. So I want to go way back in time for us in August when we took our field trip and we all practiced, you know, what the kids were going to have to go through getting on the bus every day. That is a little bit of a time issue for us. And so these guidelines may change, though, over the next 3 to 4 months, particularly as adults become more vaccinated and children become vaccinated.
Yep.
Assigning seats, you know, which obviously we have to do for contact tracing, you know, taping things and making sure people know where to sit. Again, just like the classroom, drivers need to keep 6 feet distancing. This is now where it gets kind of the murky. Minimize the number of people on the bus at one time within reason. That's very different than in August when the answer was we are only allowed to have 27 people per bus, one person per seat. So this is where the murkiness starts to creep in a little bit. You know, adults who don't need to be on the bus shouldn't be on the bus, basically. I mentioned this before, but there was a lot of work done on what constituted the airflow. So it's 4 windows open, preferably one on each side of the bus. So this is a little bit different for us as well. Routinely clean and disinfect buses, and so currently we disinfect after every run that we do. Research is saying a little bit differently about that, and so again, that may be something that changes as well. Maybe you have to do it, you know, once, you know, in the morning, once in the afternoon, rather than, you know, we do it basically 4 times now. Here's the big one. To the extent possible, maximize the distance between children and vehicles. Since vehicles have different sizes and capacities, there is no single recommendation for spacing. That said, filling a vehicle to its maximum capacity, even with masks and face covering, poses a public health risk and is inadvisable. And that was made last August. And so I'm not sure what number 9 was that was deleted. I wish I knew.
Yeah.
I'm going to hypothesize that might have been the recommendation around 1 to a seat, but I don't know that. So we spoke last week and we talked about doing a survey for families, and there was something about it that was making me very nervous. And I'm glad that we put the brakes on because this information changes things for us. With this information, we certainly could go to an increased bus capacity. Now, when they talk about maximum capacity, they're talking about 3 to a seat. So when you see a 72-passenger bus, that's talking about 3 to a seat. Obviously, with high school and middle school students, that's not typically possible. So we would not go to that capacity. And we would still try to keep a minimum number, but we're not, what this allows us to do is we can have 127 people basically on a bus now. And so that takes away having to do the 3 runs. Still need more buses to be able to spread out the load a little bit more, to be cognizant of keeping people spaced out. But this does change things. So the reality is, with the way things are written now, and this may change as students become, the vaccination becomes available to more and more students and adults. I would expect these things to change over time, but we have to kind of plan as they are right now. And so my news for you, I guess, is that we are capable of having our normal school year schedule. And that would be a 7-hour school day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then we would be able to have our delayed start, early release on Thursday. So we can go back to that 33 and a half hours of instructional time for students on a regular basis. So I think that's good news. I guess the question that I would have for the board is that we have said from Jump Street, we are going to follow CDC guidelines. And that's really clear when it's clear guidelines. This is not. There's much more room here for
Yep.
some. And so to be 100% transparent, here, the pluses and minuses. The pluses are that you can have more buses, you can have a longer school day, you can get kids in school more. That's the big idea, right? The concern is that if you put 2 kids to a seat and you have to do contact tracing, which is kind of that 6 foot, and that number, that size is getting smaller now with masks. If you do that 6 foot social distancing, if you have 2 kids in a seat, you may have more students impacted by that, the close contact tracing. So I just want to be clear about that. So, in the event that, let's just say, if a student on the bus came down and being positive, if you have 1 to a seat, you might have 3 students that are impacted, whereas if you had 2 to a seat, you might now have 5 students impacted other than the person who was sick themselves. And so that's kind of the information that we have. Now, I don't expect with our numbers that our buses will be entirely filled to capacity. I don't think that will be the case. I do think that parents will continue to drive their kids. I think that would be kind of an adaptation to the people that can do that. So I do want to present to you that, and get kind of, the clearance from the board is would you like me to proceed with the 33.5-hour week school year as we have in the past, and then we can begin our planning for next year and share that information with parents. I just wanted to put that out there to everybody tonight.
I would say yes.
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
as vaccination rates increase too,
Yeah.
if you end up a close contact on the bus, you could have, if you had 6 that were identified, 3 or 4 of those could end up be vaccinated, and then they're not counted. They don't have to quarantine.
Correct.
As
Yeah.
the rule stands
Correct.
now. So I think the likelihood of massive amounts of kids going out as the vaccination rates increase is less.
Yep.
So,
Particularly on the bus, like I have, this whole spring with the athletics piece and the outdoor piece has made me a little bit hesitant. I'm going to be 100% transparent. I just think that's squishy. I guess I'm going to
Yeah.
keep using that word. Busing is pretty clear because it's the 6 feet, and so we have the ventilation, so I feel like that's a pretty concrete number. I would be shocked to see things escalate with the vaccinations continuing, so I think that's a good thing. But I just want to put this out so that we're all on the
Yeah.
same page and being
Yep.
Oh,
transparent.
yeah.
Yep.
I have a quick question, just in regards to remote option. Will that still be an option for the kids that have health issues or whatever, or
That's a
other
great question, and
concerns?
so the expectation is that, and again, this is part of this conversation, what I would say is that our plan is to be back fully. Would there be some type of option for people if there were some extenuating circumstances? We are looking at that 100%. Now, it may not be what it looks like this year, where we have 1 teacher, 1 grade level, and people can choose. We can't keep both things floating with the staffing that we have currently. But there will be an option for people in the event that there may be some medical or some health concerns that may be involved, 100%.
Okay, because that would just limit the amount of folks taking the bus.
Taking the bus, exactly
So
right.
that
Yep.
changes things as
Yeah.
well.
Absolutely right, 100%.
I think the goal ought to be to achieve a back to normal school year in
Yes.
September,
Yep.
if we can. And as Jen said, the trends are all suggesting that the situation should do nothing but improve over time between now and when we would have to make a final decision, I think.
I just was hesitant, and again, it goes back to my hesitancy, I guess, but something about sending the survey out was making me nervous, and I
Yeah.
just was afraid that information changes, and I didn't want it to turn into a verdict on whether we like this schedule, we like that schedule. That wasn't the
Right.
intent. I mean, I think what we all want to do is we want to get kids back to school as much as we can. I think that's the big idea. So with your blessing, that I am going to proceed, and that I will share that with staff, and that will allow us to begin to plan and kind of build,
Yeah.
a little bit more detailed plans.
Just to clarify that there would be a late start and early release
That's correct.
with this,
That would-
normal
that's
school year.
correct.
Perfect.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
The
That's awesome.
only thing, and I have not, I talked to Heather 2 hours ago. There may be a 5 or 10-minute difference that we may have to play with to make things work, but it will be a minimal
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yep.
But I just, like the cleaning piece, those recommendations change, that gives us some flexibility. And
Yep.
so I just, I don't expect that to happen, but I just, so in my mind, we're gonna have Marshall Middle School start at 7:30, they'll end at 3:30. We have a 7-hour, or excuse me, 3:30, gosh, no, sorry, 2:30. We'll have a 7-hour school day. If we had to, is it end at 2:55 or 2:25 rather than 2:30? That's what I'm talking about, that type of small change. It really wouldn't impact families, but just to be 100%, clear about
Hey,
that.
John, in that survey, is there a way to gain an understanding about transportation for students and potentially, if you can project, okay, am I taking the is my kid taking the bus or am I driving, and try to get some of that data.
Yeah, Heather has that ready to go.
You know, yeah, if basically it, if the results say and suggest that, buses, and bus drivers, we have a surplus, how is that handled?
Surplus of kids or surplus of?
Buses and drivers,
I'm sorry, is it if we have too many drivers, you're saying?
and buses, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
because potentially there could be a number of students come September that are being driven to school.
Yeah, absolutely.
There always are.
Well, maybe even more, with the understanding that we're going back to school for.
Yeah, 100%. The curveball for us as we plan this is the CDS piece. So taking on that pre-K piece is going to create some more runs. And so that's one of the variables that we need to try to work our way through. So Heather has a survey ready to send out to be able to find out what we have. We have, I believe right now, there's 2 or 3 driver openings. We have 1 person in the pipeline, so if we don't need to hire the additional person, we will not hire that person.
Yep.
The extra bus that we will purchase needs to be a wheelchair bus with wheelchair accessibility. That's why that bus was so important. It wasn't
Yeah.
just a typical school bus because
Right.
of the CDS
Yep.
piece. That's part of this formula that we have to work our way through, so.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to
Yeah,
everybody?
definitely, yeah, it does.
Okay,
Exciting.
fantastic.
And hopefully they'll, by the time everything rolls around, this will change again.
I bet it will.
To
Yeah.
be more
Yep.
Yeah.
lenient anyway, so, yeah, that's great.
It's tricky, and we've got I got an email this week regarding like, what about prom and those types of things? And the hard part is that, with the contact tracing, kids dancing, and so now, is the respiration up or is the respiration not up? Because if it's up, now we're using the 14 feet social distancing rules. If it's down, we're using the 6 feet, and so, you start to get into this real area. And my concern, and believe me, I believe that I am 100% kid-focused. Like that's something that I never want to lose. But what I have concerns about is if you do something, let's say the week before graduation, and all of a sudden, heaven forbid, we have a positive case, and then all of a sudden we have to, we have a spring sports situation all of a sudden where we're not really sure, and where we're told that all of a sudden, a bunch of kids have to quarantine. Like that's there's consequences for those decisions, and so I think we really need to be mindful of what we're doing. And so other communities have kind of, I think, had those similar conversations, and so I think there's been a few parent groups, specifically my understanding is in Noble and in Sanford and I believe York as well, who have said, like, as parents, we're going to kind of run it like they did the kind of the 8th grade social kind of idea after graduation, taking kind of the graduation piece out, so we're not jeopardizing that part of it. So, and so, that's not to push anything off. I'm just trying to give you the facts as to where we are. It is very difficult, particularly when you add that respiration piece in. I would love to be able to say, hey, look, this is easy to do, let's do it. But there is some consequences if things go awry, and we've seen things go awry. So.
Can we do something outside? I mean,
Yeah, so I think that was the idea.
The
When they-
risk outside is,
But even still, if you're 14 feet dancing, technically,
yeah.
whether it's right or wrong, technically.
That's what happened with the spring
thing.
sport, and
Right. Even though it doesn't make sense, that's still the guidelines.
It's still
and
the
if we're gonna
guidelines.
defer
Well, they
to
changed
CDC.
it now. They're saying that, the CDC overstated how risky it was to be doing things outside. It's very, very low, and
Right.
And then, like outdoors, masks or no mask, it really doesn't matter. The 6 feet, 12, 14 feet is still, so it's very interesting. And so,
Yeah.
we've had to spend a lot of time talking to parents, talking to, students have been fantastic. I'll tell you, I'll share with you on Monday, there was a middle school baseball softball game, and there must have been 150 people out there watching, which was just so nice that people just wanted to be out. Not a single issue. People being respectful, being mindful, but it was just so nice of people being outdoors,
Yes.
enjoying the moment, and just being there supportive. You could tell people are ready for those types of things. So,
Yep.
as we all are, but we need to be careful. We've been careful all along, and I know this is really hard. But this is one of those things, and I think that's why Rob talked about doing the senior banquet outdoors, and so there isn't the dancing, so now we can have the 6 feet piece, which we can feel really comfortable about. The other question that is coming up fairly frequently is, how do we handle recess for students? And that's the tricky one. When, it's great to say, you must, guarantee that you can keep kids 6 feet apart for less than 15 minutes, in order not to have any contact tracing. And so if any of us who've dealt with first graders, second graders, or third graders, you can't guarantee much of anything, you know, and so, you know, we're really trying to work on how do you mitigate the numbers to be able to be mindful of that, but also know that we have that 15-minute window that allows us, it has to be less than, you know, or greater than 15 minutes in order for it to be an issue. Again, that may change by the time September rolls around, but those are the types of things that we're trying to plan for the unknown with the current iteration of the requirements that may evolve over time. So just to share with everybody.
Thank you.
Yep. Next on the agenda is some really good news, and this may have been approved today. I have not spoken to Judy, so forgive me, but our plan is to have a vaccination clinic on May 21st and then June 11th, and that would be for students 12 and up. We put a survey out to about 1,200 students or families of students, and about 300 people got back to us saying that they wanted to be vaccinated, which I think is really good news. Those who wanted to be vaccinated let us know that thank you very much for offering, but we're going to try to get it quicker if we can through a pharmacy, which is great. And so this, I think, allows us to be able to have maybe take some pressure off some families around access, to be able to not have to worry about going to a pharmacy, that they can do it right at school, and we would handle it similar to the flu clinic. So there would be a 3-hour block of time on the 21st at Marshwood High School. There would be a 3-hour block of time in the afternoon at Marshwood Middle School. And then again on the 11th, it would be a 3-hour block of time in the morning at Marshwood High School, and a 3-hour block of time at Marshwood Middle School in the afternoon. The only curveball I kind of mentioned this morning is that the 11th is graduation. So that's a little more excitement to the day here, to have a clinic, so hopefully it's a sunny day. But that, you know, we will manage that one way or the other. If we have to use the auditorium or a side entrance, we'll figure that out. But that, you know, it's a great opportunity. So we think about 300 people would receive the vaccination. That's through Northern Light.
So is that the first shot and then the second shot?
Second
or-
shot would be the 11th of June. So
Oh,
21st of May, then the 11th of June.
Okay, so that's enough days between, okay.
Yeah, and that's
Exactly
that-
21?
Yep.
Wait, it's a 2-shot,
2-shot, yes.
Pfizer.
Pfizer, yes.
that close together?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's.
Yep.
3 weeks?
Pfizer's
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Is that really 3
Yep.
weeks?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
exactly
21
3
days
weeks.
exactly, I believe.
They
Oh,
do it
okay.
exactly.
I thought it was
Yep.
28, that's so weird, okay.
Northern Lights
Moderna
did
was
an
a little,
amazing
Moderna
job.
was 28.
Moderna's
Yeah.
28, that's
Yep.
what I
And
got.
Pfizer's the only one that 12
It's 12.
to 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's great.
Next, just some positive news that Angie Littlefield has been nominated by Rich Buzzell to be the new girls basketball coach at Marshwood High School. Angie served as an interim coach for us for some time, about 6 or 7 years ago. Has been an assistant coach, is a guidance counselor at the school, so we're really excited to have Angie working with our young athletes. Just wanted to share that information with you. Mr. Buzzell is going to put out a press release regarding that, but I'm just really excited to have Angie be a head coach. A couple of resignations that came this week. Bree Thomas, who is the Central School Guidance Counselor, is resigning her position there. If you don't know Bree, one of the most lovely people that you'd ever meet, and just, had some life things that decided to resign, and I think, something that we think very highly of. The good news for us is that we are asking Bree if she would be interested in still being our suicide prevention coordinator. So she's the one who does all of our suicide trainings across the district. So we're hoping that she'll continue in that role for us, which is, we do that training, I think, 4 times a year, just to make sure we meet the state law around that. And then Kristen Bernace, who, Kristen is a middle school English language arts teacher. Kristen was really instrumental in building the reentry plan for Marshwood Middle School this summer, and so some opportunities came available to Kristen, and so she will not be joining us next year. But again, someone who we really appreciate the work that she did, and she, as I said, she was a huge advocate of making that plan at the middle school and really getting staff on board with it. So we're just so appreciative of the work she did.
She was amazing.
Yeah, we're gonna miss her.
She's
She's
a really
awesome.
important voice in all of that.
Yeah.
It's great.
And then just kind of a last note, and I may not have mentioned it, and forgive me if I haven't, but I just want to share that Rich Buzzell was selected as Athletic Director of the Year for the state of Maine. And I will say, well-deserved. Rich from Jump Street has been 100% student-centered. I talk to him 2 or 3 times a day, just advocating for kids. When we weren't having athletics, his conversations were, how do we keep things going? He was integral in getting the online yoga opportunities for our students and staff available. The pandemic playbook that he and Dennis Walton put together was really instrumental for a lot of districts across the state. And then, already putting together kind of the summer criteria. So I'm really fortunate to have Rich and really happy for him. So congratulations, Rich.
That's great. Congrats.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Rich, particularly, very humbly, shared the accolades with his team. Of course, he's a team player, but
Yes.
it was well-deserved,
Very well deserved.
well-deserved.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you. We have had no correspondence upon which to report, so we'll move into the report of the committees. Facilities and Finance will next meet on the 16th of June. Education Policy will next meet on the 26th of May. We do have some second readings in our new business tonight to tend to from the last meeting. And then the third committee, of course, is the Wellness Committee / Social Emotional Learning Committee. Do we have any updates on that, Lisa?
So we had just had a meeting
Yep.
last week.
Yep.
and I don't know that I don't think there's a meeting in June.
No, that was the
No.
last meeting of the
So
year.
I think that we start back up, I'm guessing in September.
I can share an update if you'd like me to,
Sure,
as a result of
thank
that
you.
meeting. Yeah, absolutely. We met as administrators and really have been breaking down some data around our social work services, particularly at the elementary school. And so Scott had met with our elementary social worker to really kind of talk about, what the next steps for our programs are. And so I will be bringing a recommendation shortly around a step that we'd like to take around increasing some services for our students. And so part of it is building a systematic way to approach things, and particularly around, as we go into next year, the SAT, which is a student assistant team model. We need to really talk about how to have early and often interventions for students as they return to school. That's going to be a really important part of that work. And being able to have this social worker at times really allows us to tie in that family component, which is really important. So that must be my update around the social emotional.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Great news.
That brings us to new business. And the first item of new business, I will entertain a motion, please, to approve the QEA teachers contract.
I move we approve the 2021 through 2024 QEA teachers contract.
I'll second. Lisa?
Lisa, thank you. Thank you, Sue. John, did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, outstanding. I got an email yesterday that the teachers have ratified the contract, and so they have approved it, which is really great news. And so, depending on our vote, then we can have that completed. I just want to again thank the QEA and the members of the board and the administrative team who really spent a great deal of time pulling apart that contract and really trying to work collaboratively to problem solve. Obviously, anytime negotiated is tricky, but on top of that, to add in the fact that we're in the middle of the pandemic, certainly did not lighten the load for anybody. So I just want to, express my deep appreciation to all.
Absolutely. Any comments or questions from the board? In that case, all in favor? That is 6-0. Thank you. May I have a motion, please, on the second reading for AC-R?
I move to approve the second reading and discussion policy AC-R, grievance procedure for persons with disabilities.
Second that.
Matt, thank you, and Heather, thank you. We discussed this at our last meeting. It was a name change for the responsible individual. I think that was all. Any comments or questions? All in favor? That is 6-0. Thank you very much. A motion, please, on KLG-R.
I move to approve a second reading and discussion of policy KLG-R, relations with law enforcement authorities, administrative procedure.
Second, Heather.
Heather, thank you, and Jen, thank you. Comments or questions? None. All in favor, please. That is 6-0. Thank you. A motion on JICH, please.
I move we approve the second reading and discussion of policy JICH, drug and alcohol use by students.
I'll second, Jen.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Lisa. Questions or comments? I should note that there have been no changes on any of these since our last read.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? 6-0. Thank you. GBEC, please.
I move to approve a second reading and discussion of policy GBEC, drug-free workplace.
Second.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jen. Questions or comments? All in favor? 6-0. Thank you very much. And a motion, please, on ADC.
I move to approve the second reading and discussion of policy ADC, tobacco-free schools, use and possession of tobacco and electronic smoking devices.
I'll second, Jen.
Jen, thank you. Heather, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor? That is 6-0. Thank you very much. Before we move into executive session, does anyone on the board have any other comments or topics they wish to discuss at this time? Anybody in the audience? All right, in that case, may I please have a motion to enter into executive session?
I move we enter into an executive session for the purpose of discussing public employer and its negotiators. 1 MRSA paragraph 4056D.
Second. Oh, Matt, you could take it.
Okay, Matt and Sue, thank you very much. All in favor? That is 6-0. We move into executive session at 7:36. Thank you all.
Thank you.